Hi Jonathan.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us today at Digital Construction Week.
Not a problem.
Do you want to just give us a brief introduction into who you are and a bit about your background?
So my name's Johnathan Munkley. I lead the digital services team at WSP. Focus on BIM, digital innovation, information management, and digital advisory within the broader WSP business, basically.
And as one of the core members of Zero Construct, can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved and a bit about Zero Construct as well and the collaboration between members?
So, a guy called James Bowles that I'm really good friends with, we were working on projects in America during lockdown, working on data centres. They were building a lot of them. They were building it was like a program of 30 data centres. Then one day the client said, right, we want 60 data centres. And I was kind of a little bit shocked that someone could do that, just like that. So James and I started adding carbon as an idea as a metric for measurement on the project. So the idea of how can the client see how their design changes impact the embodied carbon of the project. And then James started driving the idea of bringing together a community to kind of look at that on a broader scale. So over the last kind of 18 months to 2 years, Zero Construct has grown as a global community, focused on reducing upfront carbon in construction.
And currently of the built environment accounts for estimated, it's around 12% of all CO2 emissions, and the government has committed to net zero for the industry by 2050. Do you think it's achievable?
I think it has to be, rather than is it. I think the definition of net zero is an interesting one, because I think anything you build is going to have embodied carbon in it. There'll be a lot of carbon offset, nature-based solutions. I don't think there's an alternative for our industry or for our planet and our climate for the construction industry to book itself up. It needs its kind of panic moment at some point to really start to shift the change. There is stuff you can do today on projects. There's stuff you can do tomorrow on projects. It's not happening on a broad enough scale yet, in my opinion. So, cut a long story short, I do think it's achievable. I just think it's going to be very hard. Construction is a difficult industry to change.
So as we know, leading on from that, the industry is facing significant challenges in material shortages and rising costs. Do you feel this is impacting companies' approaches to the steps that they take in helping them sort of achieve net zero? And would look at alternative build methods help alleviate those sort of pressures on companies around that sort of issue?
I think it could have a negative impact, in all honesty. Construction design consultancy, the built environment runs on very tight margins. So it's very much driven by protecting those margins. So as soon as there's any kind of cost shock, it changes the way people will think. So for example, procuring low carbon concrete is very hard. It takes a lot longer. There's not as much of it, so it's not used widely like traditional concrete. But there are alternative methods, alternative mixes, different ways to make traditional concrete to achieve that. It's just not known about yet. The concrete experts in Zero Construct tell me that you can start to reduce it today by 6% just by changing the current mix. So there's things you can do now, but I actually think the cost shock will have the opposite effect on it, in all honesty, at the moment.
And then this year, here we are, you have a Zero Gallery, lounge, stand at the digital construction event. So why did you feel that DCW was the right place to sort of bring your message to the forefront?
There's probably multiple facets to that. So my background in my career in construction over the last 15 years has been very much focused on digital. So Digital Construction Week has always been a place I've been involved with. I think digital process has a very large, has a role to play in carbon reduction, giving clients the ability to measure and understand their decisions. Zero's community is very well connected at Digital Construction Week. It knows a lot of people, and our network is everywhere. So the idea of being at Digital Construction Week to kind of bring that community together and show our broader network what we've done, we felt it was the right thing to do. I think there was something like 200 people in around this stand last night when we hosted our reception. So it shows that we've managed to drive a lot of interest.
Yeah, wonderful. And from your view, how important do you feel that digitalisation is to sort of contributing to achieving net zero ultimately?
I think it has an important part to play. Without digitising the way you design, you can't really measure anything. So therefore you wouldn't really know what your design was doing. So for example, if you're working in BIM or 3D, if you embed the embodied carbon data in the material, you can start to understand the embodied carbon in the design. You can see the design changes, the ability to measure things like how efficient building systems are working, building service systems. How efficient is that running? Is it achieving its objectives? Is it broken? Is it running efficiently? So the idea of, say, the ultimate term digital twin of an asset or a smart asset is going to play a really important part in carbon reduction in the built environment. So basically, without digital, I don't think we would make the steps towards carbon reduction. It's got a fundamental role to play in my opinion.
Perhaps we believe adoption of digital is absolute key for growth to the industry as well. And you yourself have been focusing on adoption of future technologies within the UK and also, I understand, internationally for over 15 years. Where do you feel the blocker is for digital uptake, and what do you think we should be doing to address it, really?
I think there's lots of blockers. I think there's the easy low-hanging fruit when it comes to blockers is the generational gap. Take, for example, immersive technologies. They are used by teenagers every day in their day-to-day lives. They will take that into their careers. So things like gamification, we use that on projects, but it's not mass adopted. I think in 5 to 10 years' time, gamification of projects will be completely normal. I also think in construction, there's, in a lot of ways, there's too much technology. I don't think our industry needs any more technology at the moment. It just needs to adopt what it's got and do it well. I can't remember the last time I saw a piece of tech in the last 3 years that I was like, wow, that's going to change the game, because we're still not using the tools we do have to their capacity. So just throwing more tech at stuff doesn't fix it. We need to focus more on the people and the process and the why and the business strategy and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, if you look at sort of the last 2 years, we've gone through an unprecedented times for certainly the industry as a whole. How do you think this approach and what changes were needed to help survive during this time? And I suppose looking back, would there be anything that you'd do differently?
One of the companies I was working at during in the before times, I like to call them, so before the pandemic, it didn't want to adopt things like BIM 360 Teams, didn't want to do that. And the pandemic forced mass adoption of Teams and all the cloud-based solutions across the group, kind of forced them. There was a kind of an initial set of panic, and then it worked. However, I think there has been some negative impacts on the back of the remote working thing and everyone going fully remote. I think online meeting fatigue has become a real thing for teams. Sometimes people in my team wake up in the morning, put on a headset, take the headset off at 6 o'clock, walk away. They're back to back, non-stop. Everyone, if people see a gap in your diary, they just take it. So the idea of hybrid working becomes difficult because they see 10 hours of meetings and they think, why should I travel to an office to sit in meetings online? The people are in the office for 10 hours. I also think there's potential negative impact on graduates and emerging talent because they won't have that person to sit next to in the office, or that kind of mentorship, or the kind of first 6 months in industry you need, where you need someone sat next to you just to understand what you're doing and learn from. So we're really, as a team, we want to push that in the next kind of 12 to 18 months from a growth perspective to get the idea of apprentices and graduates back into our team anyway.
And lastly, what are your sort of takeaways from Digital Construction Week, and what do you see in the future of the industry?
I think the next few years there is going to be an insane push for carbon reduction, and it's going to become the message for everybody on projects. It seems to be a much easier conversation to have with people in terms of like a narrative. So if you went to a client 5 or 6 years ago and said you must do BIM on your project because you're going to save money, it wasn't the easiest conversation to have because they just didn't get it generally. It took a long time to explain to them, lots of presentations. If there's things like with the EU taxonomy coming out and potential policy changes, the idea for clients that have to drive carbon out of their projects through scope 1, 2 and 3, it is going to become a fundamental topic in every project. So And Zero Construct, brilliant learning platform for me, the ability to take the stuff I've learned in it into my job, because every single project I work on now has a carbon angle, just about, and I don't think that's going to change. I think that's just going to ramp up.
Great. Johnathan, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much for sharing it and taking us through. So appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, and well, thank you for having us in the lounge as well. It's really cool.